Yes, hello. With me is Steven Bucher. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We're in, obviously, we're at PowerShell Conference Europe. How did you like it so far?
Oh, so far it's been amazing. It's been as great as always. It's been a lot of fun talking with people. I've learned a lot more, feel a lot more, comfortable now with a couple years under my belt, and feel very excited to share kind of the new things that we've been doing and learn a lot from the folks
Yeah,
here.
I think it's polite to say that you got some years to stay in the business until you retire. You're pretty young, but you're also very experienced. You've been here a couple of times. You've been here last year in Prague, right?
Yeah.
Was that the first one? Did you show up before?
I was in Vienna. This is my third PS conference.
third.
EU. However, my first one, I was very, very fresh on the job and very much like an attendee, just learning as much as I could there rather
I
than
remember.
being a presenter. So.
Yeah, I remember. I wasn't quite sure was that Vienna or Prague. Yeah, but it's good to have you back.
Yeah, thank you.
So, within the context of PowerShell, you were pretty well known because you're one of the PowerShell team members. Can you tell a little bit about yourself, how you came into, when you were fresh into that team and what you're doing today?
Sure, yeah. So, I joined the PowerShell team about 2.5 years ago. A little over 2.5 years ago, I guess now. But I joined straight out of university. I had absolutely no idea what PowerShell was until the first day I started, to be quite honest. But I learned very quickly how powerful and how awesome PowerShell is, and have been on the team, like I said, 2.5 years. I work primarily on the interactive improvements to PowerShell, so PSReadLine, the core engine itself. I work on telemetry, data science around it, and some other AI improvements that we've been exploring for a while now. But
Yeah, AI has to be mentioned now every second. It doesn't count if we don't mention AI. But we will come back to that later.
Yeah.
What were your favorite skills, your favorite programming language that you, I guess, on high school, university, or in your private life? What did you prefer?
Well, so before I joined Microsoft, I studied computer engineering and kind of entrepreneurship in my university. And so I had a little bit of mix of business and technology, but I was very much into robotics and kind of hardware engineering. And I was a firmware engineer for a little bit of time. I've been a software engineering intern. I've been a SRE, a site reliability engineer, before. And so I kind of had a really mixed bag of experiences under my belt. I learned my first programming language I learned was JavaScript from a free Khan Academy course online. And then I learned Java. I learned some C++, some C. My university was taught in C, so I learned a lot of C. Python, React. I did a lot of just various stuff based on the projects I was doing. But I was always interested in kind of the full stack hardware to software development. So I spent a lot of time building out microcontrollers and smaller breadboard projects to create the hardware with the software and create some kind of full product or full solution that way. So
yeah. That's a harsh question. Let's think about the apocalypse. PowerShell would not exist any longer. That is, okay, nobody looks this, but what would you think could also be a proper solution to automation, scripting, if we would, just as an experiment, if we would not think about PowerShell? What could be a replacement? Is there a replacement?
I mean, it's hard to say for every single case, right? Because PowerShell is deeply embedded in a lot of different tools and different things with the cloud. So it's difficult to be like, okay, well, you'd have to write a library for this language in order to get this kind of communication in with the cloud, or you can wrap all these APIs technically. It's going to look quite ugly, but you can do a lot of what you can with other languages as well. But I think PowerShell does have a really powerful abstraction and simplicity to it for connecting these different services and being that kind of glue language. So it's hard to say. I mean, it really depends, but yeah.
So that's the polite way to say what I fully agree is that there is no replacement, right?
Not exactly. Not fully end to end.
So the apocalypse will not happen. So
yes.
we will stick to that. But thinking about other scripting languages, Python is super super dominant. What do you think about Python? For example, the inventor of Python is a colleague of yours, right? He's working at Microsoft.
Yeah, he is.
Did you meet him?
I have not met him yet. We have discussed meeting him to actually get some kind of inspiration, but we haven't formally met yet. I'd love to someday. But I think Python's a great language. I'm very much of the philosophy, whatever works for folks is whatever they need. And so it's wherever you need to get the job done, be it Python, be it Node, be it, PowerShell, be it, whatever programming language you want. Things can work best. We want to just make sure that PowerShell is working what best it can for the applications that it can be used for. And obviously that's a lot. So it's not easy to say how we're doing that. But I think Python's a great language. It's very easy to learn from a development perspective. It's taught a lot, and it's very, I think one of the more interesting things about it is its expansive library that it has, because it's a very, very popular language. There's almost a library for anything out there, but so it makes it very, very easy to use.
I always ask these things not while I doubt PowerShell or I doubt the future of PowerShell. I'm just trying to understand things, and we discussed that yesterday, and we came to a point where we said, you can't discuss the Beatles or Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan is not the best guitar player on earth. He's not the best singer, but he's one of the biggest artists. And if you think about it, what makes people like these so special, then it's art. So the genius of these people, it is so recognizable that this is special. And I think what sticks us together is that the design of PowerShell as a scripting language is pretty special. Yeah. There are some interconnections in terms of simplicity, for example, which is a heavy thing in Python too. But this object-based thing is definitely outstanding.
Yeah, right? It definitely is outstanding, and I think I'm very fortunate to be on the team with some of the folks who were there from the beginning, and we still have conversations. Recently, being like, we want to do these things. Like, we actually thought about this. 16, 17 years ago when they were developing
the first generation. Let us call them the first generation.
Yeah, and so they spent a long time, very thoughtful time thinking about it, and so we're still seeing the, I guess, benefits and the I don't know how you say it best, but it's we're still seeing that thoughtfulness today as we still develop on it, I guess.
Yeah, it lives.
It lives
because of the beauty of the design. Some things are very, very well designed. Yeah. And that you can build upon that foundation, that very solid foundation. You mentioned PSReadLine. Let's be a little bit technical. The funny thing is that now that we have the split, we don't mention the split between, the old and the new one. Something like PSReadLine is a very dominant part of PowerShell experience. Yeah. So what I found out lately is that if you simply update a couple of things to Windows PowerShell 5, then you have almost, in many aspects, you're on the same level, but you have to update that first. You know what I mean? For the prediction that you do today. From your perspective as the developer, one of the developers, what are the most important things in PSReadline and that addition of AI that will happen now and in the future? What are...
Sure. So I'll first talk about PSReadline, and then I'll kind of talk about AI, and you'll see how I connect the two later. But they're not exactly connected today. But PSReadline is is the thing that helps you as you kind of work along with typing in the interactive shell of PowerShell.
From syntax highlighting, from key binding, so hotkeys, from predictive IntelliSense. It helps with some tab completion. Anything to help you write the commands that you want in the shell, PSReadline is kind of there for. And it is compatible with 5.1. There is obviously limitations. You have to upgrade to get some of the predictive IntelliSense stuff for 5.1, but you still are actually limited where you can only use history predictors. You can't use these plugin predictors, which are the
exciting bit, I guess, with predictors.
Quick note, there is all the history function. That is also interesting because
Yes.
that also is delivered by PSReadLine in a more extensive way, right?
Yeah, the PowerShell history is provided by PSReadLine, and so you can do a lot of work there to enhance your history, but also not save. We do a lot of automatic saving, or excuse me, automatic exclusions of things like passwords and tokens and certain keywords that we know are sensitive, could contain sensitive information. So we do not log those in our history, but we do like to use your history to help you, retype what you do. Because, we know that a lot of CLI users are just going to hit the up arrow key to get the last command that they just used, or as they type out, they remember roughly what the command was, but maybe not all of it. And so as they type out, roughly what it is, they can find the rest of it with predictive intelligence with history.
And if we talk about predictions, then if you want to come to this, it's obvious that artificial intelligence can enhance that. And if we think about Copilot in an editor, how can that be reflected in the command line in PSReadLine?
So that's something we've explored. The difficulty there is we do have very strict performance, I guess, metrics, performance bars that we want to have with PSReadLine. We cannot get in between you typing and the characters being ran on the screen, or at least we have a very short window that we can do it before it starts to feel like it's lagging and stuff. So we have very, very short timeout period of when the predictions have to be returned. And so that makes it very difficult to utilize AI, at least at the state it is right now, because you have to often make off-box calls or some kind of API calls that go beyond the time limit that we have. And so it's like 20 milliseconds. It's very, very short. So, obviously that is the area that we want to, eventually get to, but I think as models improve and get faster, even running local ones is starting to get easier and easier. So perhaps there's an opportunity there in the future. But as kind of a way to start exploring the AI integration with the shell, we have launched a different tool that we call, right now it's under the name Project Mercury, which is kind of a homage to the first human spaceflight craft, because this is our first dive into this space, and also the Roman god Mercury kind of works with messages and stuff. So we thought it fit well, but it is a completely separate CLI tool that is used to communicate with different agents or different models of your choice or system providers of your choice. And we have a PowerShell module to actually connect it better with some of the PSReadLine features and interactive improvements to PowerShell, so that you can get the responses from AI into predictive intelligence if you have the side pane open running the AI shell, as we sort of call it. So we are thinking about the improvements. Right now we hit a lot of technical limitations, and we're still figuring out the right flow, because we can't completely change up the CLI. It's a very everyone has their habits and are very used to his experience. We cannot completely change it, but we want to figure out how we can fit in new technologies into people's workflows that way, to help assist them feel more comfortable using the CLI, more comfortable using PowerShell, and get their work done faster and more competently.
If I think about something like the JSON format, very popular these days, and a simplified way to create objects inside a PowerShell. If you get some JSON response, you directly have rich PowerShell objects, and nothing to do there. And if you keep that in mind and think about native commands, then there is a nice bridge between both worlds, between commandlets and native commands. So if you consider having a native command that simply outputs JSON, it perfectly aligns with the design principles of PowerShell. So I'm talking about that because we have to mention tools like Winget, the app installer CLI, which is by its nature a native command. They are working on a set of commandlets, but let's imagine we don't have commandlets over there. Could you think of a PowerShell world where you heavily focus on native commands and let them beautifully work with a pipeline and that stuff? Do you invest in that area?
Absolutely. I think that's one of our big investments for 7.5 is some technology to help us enable kind of a way to capture some of the native command output in a way that we can, way down the line, look towards the future where instead of, if I have a native command that outputs JSON, I can pipe it to convert from JSON.
Exactly.
And I can then use it as a PowerShell object. Now, imagine we just do it automatically. And so there is a way for you to, have native commands that take inputs and take outputs and be it with your PowerShell pipeline and create a consistency across all these kind of tools that have that kind of capability for machine readable output and input. So
would that lead to the situation where you have to make some bigger changes inside the code to automatically convert JSON objects, or could that simply be done by kind of a minor change in the rendering engine? You know what I mean? So think about the PSXML files, for example, that define what is output. How deep would be the change?
The change would be pretty deep. Right now, it is actually for us to be able to see. Right now, for native commands, we kind of throw the output to standard out. And so we don't have a way to actually kind of get between that right now and have PowerShell, quote unquote, see it. And it's a little difficult to explain, but we need some kind of way to have a pseudo terminal to capture the output, and then we can see the output, and then once we know the output's there, then the power comes when we can say, oh, this looks like JSON, or this may be just text, so we'll just put it to text, or perhaps there's some other ways other formats that we can support as well in this automatic conversion. But right now, we're just trying to get to seeing it so that we can also use native commands to if they have error outputs too, we can use the feedback provider to actually trigger upon those as well. We can trigger feedback providers on certain inbuilt exceptions that perhaps the native commands throw, but it is not. If there's an error with one of those commands, we can't really throw a feedback provider suggestion unless the feedback provider knows what's the native commands being run. So there's a lot of other opportunities we have with this kind of pseudo terminal work, we'll call it. And so we're very excited for that. So we're hoping it will come sometime in the future, or sometime in the near future.
That's a good keyword, just because you just mentioned it. One of the big things that people always annoyed, and that not actually a topic of PowerShell, it's a Windows topic. That is the run as thing, the SU, super user, substitute user, sudo, whatsoever. What is so naturally to be done in Linux and so on. And now Microsoft is working on a sudo command.
Yes.
That is in beta. And how much does this discussion and the new things are reflected in your life? Because it's not your team that's working.
No, it is
right?
not our team, but we work closely with them on kind of a variety of other topics. I think, we were always kind of intrigued by the idea of sudo on Windows and had some of our own testing because it was a very highly requested feature. And another team within Microsoft was able to push it out. And yeah, they released it, I think, a few months ago in this kind of preview state. But I think I'm excited for it. I think it's an interesting change, and I very much like kind of parity across platforms and parity across experiences. It may not be, the necessarily right syntax. I mean, I think sudo is sudo in Windows as well now, but for that kind of elevated command is, I think, a pretty exciting step. So.
And it, more or less, it makes the product complete, right? I always
Yes.
felt that the user account control is that is a very important next step, but that dates back to Vista. But ever since, it didn't really mature. There were some changes, some notable changes in Windows 7 because anybody complained. But I think Microsoft totally forgot that there are other use cases, and one of it is the command line. Nowadays, people use a lot of different interfaces, hosts. There might be one or two dominant ones, but we have Windows Terminal, heavily used. We have the generic PowerShell XE, Posh XE. We have ISE still. Some people use Notepad++, copy paste. And again, we're back in the terminal. They really use, or VI. But of course, the most popular thing is VS Code, I think, these days. And Andy Jordan does that. if I get it right. How much, how deep is or how strong is the connection between the two of you or the team at all? How big is the influence of VS Code and its extension to what you do with PowerShell Readline?
I think we the connection's strong. I mean, we have been spending a lot of time making sure our VS Code extension is at a really good stable space, and we feel much more confidently in that than we do, a year ago or 2 years ago, right? It's much more robust and much more helpful extension. And I think we absolutely talk about how we can keep consistency between the terminal, VS Code, and bring also some of those experiences across. So there is that consistency. And we know we know VS Code is where people want to edit, longer PowerShell scripts and even use the terminal there as they're coding and stuff. And so we want to make sure our experiences work in both. And so, yeah, we absolutely do work on that. As far as, it's still, an area of interest for us to expand it out further. But we're excited for the future of it. Like I said, we spent most of the time in the last couple of years just making sure that the extension is robust and powerful and stable. So,
yeah. I don't know if that kind of humor is your cup of tea, but if you allow me to say that, that a little bit, these things sound like my favorite soccer club that says next year we will improve and we will get the championship, and it's over and over again. So we have to be honest. There are lots of things that can be improved, right? Because there's by the nature of it, it's a hard thing to integrate PowerShell into the TypeScript-based VS Code world.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, to your point, it's always like you can almost think of it as like a good thing too. It's like next year will be good. It's like next year we're going to be better. Like we're going to be improving. It's not that we aren't good now. It's that we are still always future looking and feature improving. Excuse me.
Yeah. Is there anything beyond? Do you have anything on the table? Okay, you might say I wouldn't talk about it, but maybe there is something, a vision or something that goes beyond that. Or I would start by VS Code. I think this tool, the editor, is taken for granted. Is there anything beyond on the long run that you see that is the direction we head for, or dreams that we have?
For VS Code specifically?
For the ecosystem. And that definitely consists of multiple items, the PowerShell in its inner core. Yeah. But the ecosystem is way more. It is Git, GitHub, VS Code, the extension, it's the Azure integration. It is Azure CLI. There are a couple of things that make the PowerShell experience today. It depends on how you work.
I think we have certain visions in particular these areas as far as kind of that overall vision. It goes back to just, we want to improve the lives. We want to empower folks to achieve more in the CLI and with operations, with PowerShell, with Azure CLI, with the components that we have control on and that PowerShell is integrated with, such as like Azure Functions, Azure Automation, GitHub. There's all these different things, and so it is quite often like herding cats to be able to do that. But we want to make sure we grow this ecosystem so you kind of have, our vision is kind of supporting more end-to-end solutions where we know you're going to be using PowerShell at every stage in this particular operations timeline, I guess, or at least are able to get everything that you need done to support these scenarios. And I think ACR is a good example of that, where we want to support private repositories because we understand the security, the compliance, the important it is for people to have a secure place to store their packages as an organization, as a private entity, as whomever. And so, coupling that with the improvements to PS Resource Get, how we can have a very simple way for you to use that, use that repository with your own packages and have it much more performant with the newest PS Resource Get, and help you along the way with PSReadLine to help you get there and get back and do it that way. Yeah.
What's your opinion upon the ever-growing number of commandlets? Most of them auto-generated. What I'm looking for is that you can say that auto-loading of modules is the best and the worst feature of PowerShell. So of course you can disable it, but that's not the perfect solution. what you will see that the performance of the user experience, the performance of PowerShell, the way you interact, is heavily influenced by the sheer number of commandlets that you have in your PS module path. And since we now face the situation that by technologies like Microsoft Graph, SDK, and stuff like that, you have thousands of commandlets, and that really leads to a pure performance. Is there anything that you can think of that will, on the long run, be an improvement? Because otherwise, we only have to say, okay, we have to wait. Number one, we have to disable it. Not very nice.
Yeah.
Or we have to limit the number of modules that we put in the path. But that would conflict with the basic ideas of the Azure guys, of the Graph API guide, because you do not want to constantly set up modules, because today you need it and you remove it. And again, is there something on the long run that you think can be an improvement?
We've been looking at, our team has been looking at, I can't say I've personally been looking too deeply as far as that performance. I've been looking more in the how we can make PSReadLine perhaps more performant, because that is also a piece in that.
Yeah, but it's a piece of that experience.
It's a piece of that experience. So
in terms of parameter predictions and
parameter predictions and all that stuff, there is processing going on always as you work, and so we're trying to focus on that. I think there is. It's hard to say what the right solution is, but I think we absolutely are interested in making things more performant. We see it, and there's a lot of, it's very difficult also to pin down to sometimes, because there is a number of external applications that kind of can do some scannings that reduce performance, and depends on your organization, but it's something we're very interested in. I can't say there's ways to do it, but there's also breaking ways to do it, right? So it's a difficult thing to say for certain, right? It's like, oh, we could make it not, turn it off by default, but then that breaks a lot of experiences and expectations. So there's always a difficult balance we have to make to users who have this experience and they're used to it, but also the increasing performance for everyone. There's a little bit of give and take that we have to do, and so it's
a friend of mine, a good software developer. He said there is only one good configuration, that's default. So what he wants to express is that the default settings must be the perfect settings, or you're doing something wrong. So on that is a hard choice then.
It is, and we made a choice to change certain defaults can change over time as well, but we do think that essentially, we want to bring the best experience. History predictors are now just enabled by default for the last couple of versions of PowerShell, and that's been a very positive experience for a lot of folks, where they're like, oh wow, it can help me, and that's what really clicked in my head. It's like, we need the shell to help you, and so I got very interested in this kind of component where it's like, there's seamless things that we can do. There's very small, minor changes that can help you without realizing you're being helped, right? But you're only gonna, I try to use a PowerShell window without predictive IntelliSense, and I feel like I'm slowed down 10x. And it's a weird thing so I really try to find those, and it's difficult to find, but I really am interested in finding those improvements that we can make to the defaults, where you don't know how good you have it until it's gone, until you try to go somewhere else where it can't be, right? So bringing a very, you're getting very, I don't want to say hooked, but you're getting very used to the experience that we're kind of building with PowerShell and growing that and assisting you along the way.
Yeah, the fun thing is that, to give an answer that without question, how do I do that? The fun thing is that way often I disable the predictions, since that is like my mother. Hi, son.
Yeah.
Have you cleaned your room? I constantly knocking at my bag and say, that eats up my my concentration.
Sure.
So that is why this one aspect I disable it, but that's up to anyone. People like it, because how does the engine know what I want to do? And if I think about that with some AI technology in the background, that can be a huge improvement. There's no doubt.
Yeah. it's a delicate balance that we want to
Definitely.
make. So we always want to, whatever we do, we make sure that there's a choice that users have with it. So you can disable if you like, if you can enhance it if you'd like. We want to at least try to be moving forward in a way that increases your productivity.
Yeah, indeed. My final question. If Microsoft is heavily looking forward to convincing people to use the cloud, Microsoft 365, Office 365 and stuff like that, that means technologies like Azure Cloud Shell will be way more important the more successful Microsoft is. What's your prediction? What will be the perfect environment in the future? Is it something like integrating Azure Cloud Shell in the Windows terminal? If you simply want to have all the latest and greatest commandlets, is it still downloading the modules and doing it locally? Or is it third thing, some integration in Visual Studio Code that in many aspects already exists, Azure Sign and stuff like that? What do you think is this the perfect environment for a customer who's convinced the cloud thing is the right thing for us?
I mean, that's difficult to say because we actually do have Cloud Shell with Windows Terminal already. Actually, you can kind of
you only have to enable it,
you
right?
have that enabled.
You log in.
Yeah, to log in, and so we do like. I think the power of the Cloud Shell is the packages that are pre-installed there. I think what we're really looking at is consistency across these different ways that you interact with Azure. VS Code, your terminal, Cloud Shell, the portal, all these different ways we want to make sure that you kind of have this consistency and you have what you need to do that. And what that need may be different, but in places where we can provide it to you before you have to install it, like Cloud Shell or anything like that, we want to make that experience very, very quick, easy, and be able to utilize it as best you can. So it's hard to describe what that looks like per se, but I'd say consistency is the biggest thing we want to have across these things. So it feels very natural to flip between them, but also like, if you know how to do something in the portal with, point and click thing, it's like we can provide scripts that, do the same to you or teach you right along the way. It's like, how can we help you graduate from a basic user to a more at scale automation user with it? And so that's where I think it would make the most sense to go.
But keeping all the different interfaces and possibilities on the same level, that's again herding cats, right?
Yeah, well, and it's not always on the same level. It's like we know certain areas are good at certain things. You're not going to be editing a 100+ script in your terminal, but you will be doing it in VS Code. So it's like we can utilize the things that make sense in VS Code, and we can utilize the things that make sense in the shell to enhance those experiences in those scopes. But there is also consistency that may be lacking between them.
I said that was my final question. Did we miss anything? Anything that you want to talk about that I didn't mention?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I'm very interested in learning how folks, feel about AI integration and feel about these kind of improvements that we're making. So I definitely encourage folks to check out the Project Mercury repo, submit some issues, have some discussions. We'd love to learn more. This is a very, very early developers preview, but we wanted to bring in the community because we know the community is whom we're serving. And so it doesn't feel right to keep them in the dark. And we want to encourage that kind of fostering of ideas and thoughts around this very early on. So.
Yeah, so thank you. I mentioned that a couple of times. What really changed my career, or my perspective on technology, is something that I would describe with the word visibility. The people working on the products are visible. You can grab them. It's very easy to get you. It's easy to find you. It's easy to find your work and drop them a note. Absolutely. And that is a very, if I go back 20 years, that was a big difference. And we try to get some more visibility. So thank you for being my guest today,
Absolutely.
Steven.
Thank you for having me.
And safe travels back to the States.
Thank you.